Let's Talk 1, Major New Edition. Part 1, 25 Everyday Issues.
Issue 1, Single Mother's Regimen. 6 a.m. Bzzz. Alarm. Brush teeth. Take a shower. Turn on TV news channel. 6:10 a.m. Make coffee and cereal. 6:15 a.m. Eat cereal and drink coffee. If I'm lucky, the children don't wake up and I have 15 minutes to read the paper. 6:30 a.m. Toss clothes in washer and get children up. 6:40 a.m. Still trying to get children up. 6:45 a.m. Drag children out of bed. 6:50 a.m. Fix breakfast for kids and prepare their school lunches. 7:10 a.m. Get dressed for work. 7:20 a.m. Make sure children are dressed for school, teeth brushed, shoes tied, hair combed, brushed. 7:25 a.m. Put makeup on so I look presentable. 7:30 a.m. Makeup half on, shuffle kids out the door for school. 7:40 a.m. Drive to work. 8:15 a.m. Arrive at office. Lots of responsibility, salary only fair, but the work is interesting. Noon. Most lunch hours I go to the dentist or shop for the kids' necessities and phone my mother. 1 p.m. Back to work until 5 p.m. or later. 5 p.m. Go to daycare center and pick up children. 5:45 p.m. Finally make it home. The traffic is terrible. 5:46 p.m. Get mail and go through past due bills. 5:50 p.m. Start dinner, something affordable and quick. Fight children off from cookie jar. 6 p.m. Do breakfast dishes and set table. 6:30 p.m. Eat dinner. 7 p.m. Make children do homework and take baths. 7:15 p.m. Insist that children do homework and take baths. Clean table and do dishes. 8 p.m. Help children finish homework. 8:30 p.m. Sit down to watch TV. Referee fights between the kids. Answer questions about sex. Explain why dad doesn't see them, why they can't have new clothes, and why they don't go skiing like other kids. 9 p.m. Make children brush teeth and go to bed. 9:15 p.m. Do washing, ironing, mending, pay what I can on the bills, write stalling letters to keep creditors off my back. 10 p.m. Go to bed. 6 a.m. Bzzz. Alarm. Another day.
Comprehension. 1. What does the woman usually do at lunch? 2. Does she do the breakfast dishes in the morning? 3. Why isn't her family financially well off?
Let's talk. 1. Why are modern people busy? 2. Do you think they are really busy or do they just pretend to be? 3. How could they have more free time? 4. Could technical developments in the future allow people to have more free time? 5. Are modern people happier than those of 30 years ago? 6. Describe your daily routine. Be as precise as possible. 7. What is your definition of happiness?
Opinion samples. 1. Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. A generation ago, women wanted more freedom and opportunity. They wanted to have choices other than the traditional wife-mother roles. Largely, they succeeded in gaining this in increments. At first, women worked part-time at low wages to supplement the family income. They generally worked while their children were in school and managed to sustain the usual care and maintenance of the home. But rather quickly, they began taking on more and more responsibility and earning more income. However, as responsibilities grew, less time was available for homemaking, and as income grew, so did spending. Families in which the woman stayed home fell further and further behind in the economic competition against their two-income peers, forcing husbands to work even harder and adding additional stress to the marriage. Families in which the wives took full-time jobs set the pace and expanded their consumption of the many new goods and services available to them, but then could not afford to allow either spouse to stop working, since they would then lose all their gains in status. The more money they made, the larger their financial responsibilities became, and the harder they had to work, and the greater became the stress. And most women were still forced to maintain the home as well as their careers. Question: how can we break the vicious circle that forces us to work and spend more, while our lives become even more disappointing or hollow?
2. People found themselves working harder, relaxing less, and spending less time at home. Quick fix solutions, fast food, artificial stimulants or sedatives, time-saving devices like computers and the internet, which merely provided more work opportunities, found ever greater demand. As people became more affluent, they found better homes and apartments ever further from work and had to buy more, shinier, newer cars to take them back and forth despite the lengthening lines of traffic. The accumulating stress helped pull families apart. People waited longer to get married, had fewer children, spent ever less time together, and got divorced more often. The marital problems brought on even more financial burdens, and single parents found themselves balancing their professional and parental duties on a daily basis. Always one step from the abyss. The only solution they could see was to earn more money in order to buy more comfort someday. Often, their children were given more material goods in lieu of personal contact with their parents, and their demand for the newest, most fashionable goods became insatiable. The desire for more social and economic equality between the genders resulted in more trouble and stress for everyone. Question: are modern people unhappy in spite of unprecedented material wealth? Why do you think so, or not?
Part 2. 25 Topical Dialogues. Issue 1. Single Mother's Regimen.
I remember when we upgraded our computer system. We all thought that our work would get much easier once we learned how to navigate the new system.
I gather that did not happen?
Absolutely not. During the transition phase, we had to do everything 2 times, once the old way that we were used to, and also once the new way. So we worked twice as hard.
Any adjustment to novelty is difficult.
And, of course, it also took a lot of time and trial and error.
But surely, however long, it was just a temporary situation. When you finally mastered the new system, I'm sure everything worked out fine.
You mean other than the continuous upgrades that we undergo?
A minor and relatively infrequent happening, I'm sure, and each time the situation improves, doesn't it?
Of course not. The more technologically advanced our office becomes, the more we are all expected to do. It used to be that if the business grew, new people were hired to handle the overflow. But now the same number of people keep doing more tasks.
Why is that so, do you reckon?
The way I figure, I used to have X number of things to do every day. Let's say it was X plus or minus 5, since every day was not exactly the same. But it took about 8 hours to do my job, and then I went home.
Okay, so then you got a new computer.
Right, so I still did my old X plus or minus 5 tasks, but for a while I did it twice, in the same 8 hours, although usually I had to work late.
So this was 2 times X plus or minus 5.
Yes. After a month, it was closer to the old task, though, since we didn't have to duplicate all our work anymore. But it never again became X plus or minus 5 in the old way. We never had the luxury of doing our old jobs in less than 8 hours, as we thought.
What happened?
It gradually, though rather quickly, became X plus Y plus Z. As each task became somewhat simpler because of the computer and other labor-saving devices, we simply had more tasks to do. But the number of tasks and the amount of support and backup work that each task now requires kept filling all the time available. More than kept pace, in fact. These days, despite all my nifty new tools, I never get to leave the office early. It's usually at least an hour later, and most of the time I end up taking work home with me.
Oh?
Yes, that's another big disadvantage. Since the computer in my house is like the one at work, being at home is more and more like being in the office. I feel more and more enslaved, as though I've lost all touch with my private life.
It must seem like the job never ends.
Exactly.
So, what can you do about it?
That's a good question. But I don't like the trend of people staying at home to do the work via computer. It's true that they save time traveling back and forth to their job, but they just use that same time doing more work. The problem is not so much the amount of time, it's the erosion of our private lives.
Maybe we should have more vacations more often.
That might help, but only if we could get someplace far away from the phones and faxes and emails. Otherwise, we would just be expanding this erosion on a global basis. We need to be able to drop out completely for some very definable period of time, or we're all going to become crazy.
You know, this reminds me of sleep.
Sleep. Now there's a novel thought.
Sleep is analogous to the modern work situation, I think. The amount of time people spend sleeping is relatively unimportant. The really vital aspect is the quality. Every day or so, people need to have a period of deep sleep. If they don't have that, they become more and more sluggish. And in only a few days, they start to lose their sanity.
I think you captured the situation perfectly. It's not really the time we spend working that is so much the issue. It's our inability to completely and clearly stop working that's the problem.
Questions. 1. Did the man seem sympathetic or indifferent at first? How can you tell? 2. Does the woman think the computer is a labor-saving or labor-making invention? Why do you think so? 3. In your own words, how is sleep like work?